What will become of Fort Monmouth once the Army closes it? Find out next on Outlook Monmouth. Welcome to Outlook Monmouth. I'm Armen McOmber, your host. Since the early 20th century, Fort Monmouth has been a leader in military intelligence and communication technologies. The fort was instrumental in America's World War II effort and has supported our armed forces in every campaign since that time. Despite staunch local opposition, the Department of Defense slated the fort for closure by September of 2011. In 2006, Governor John Corzine signed the Fort Monmouth Economic Revitalization Act into law. The act established the Fort Monmouth Economic Revitalization Planning Authority, a group of elected officials and citizens responsible for planning and managing redevelopment of the fort. We're fortunate to have with us today two representatives from the Planning Authority. Frank Cosentino serves as the authority's executive director, and Rick Harrison serves as deputy director. Welcome to Outlook Monmouth, and thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you for having us.
Mr. Cosentino, let me start with you. Maybe you could just provide a brief history of the fort, where it's located, what purposes it's served over the years,
Sure.
Just for people that aren't aware of it.
Well, as most of the folks watching know, it's located in central Monmouth County, approximately a mile from the ocean, off of Route 35. And for 90 years, it's served the purpose of the Army in both the Signal Corps and other support operations for the warfighter in wars from World War I right on through to current day.
And what still exists at Fort Monmouth at this time?
Well, the efforts at Fort Monmouth are, again, directly in support of the warfighter in terms of their communications support and multimedia operations.
Mr. Harrison, there's still, for those of us who live in Monmouth County, I think we're aware of the BRAC process and, and the closing of the fort. But you still occasionally hear something out there that, the fort's not going to close, they're going to reverse their decision. Maybe it's just optimism on some people's part. But, is there any truth to those rumors?
Well, the fact that there are the rumors is true. However, there's a federal law that mandates that the fort close by September 2011. I would say, personally, it's very unlikely that could be reversed. It would involve both houses of Congress, the White House, and it would also mandate the reversal of all of the other closures and growth projects that are part of that BRAC round. BRAC was not just about closure, it was about consolidation and realignment. And in fact, right here in New Jersey, we're experiencing some growth with the creation of the Tri-Base down in South Jersey.
And the Tri-Base is Fort Dix?
McGuire and Lakehurst Naval Air Station.
So that's actually growing?
That's actually growing.
Okay. Mr. Cosentino, in terms of the creation of, and I'll call it the authority rather than FMERPA,
Please.
But in terms of its creation, what's the role of FMERPA or the authority?
We were tasked with the responsibility of addressing the economic revitalization. The impact in this region is yet to be felt. So far, I think we've experienced the emotional impact of the loss of Fort Monmouth. I believe, in my opinion, the fiscal and financial impact is yet to be felt.
Well, what kind of impact are we talking about?
Well, the fort itself contributes $165 million to the revenues of the state and $2.4 billion to general revenues as well. The task that we had at hand was to come up with a plan which would allow the redevelopment and reuse of this 1,128 acres of property, and do it in a fashion that would allow, over a 20-year planning period, a steady growth of both commercial, but housing and retail properties as well. But our primary objective was to create a plan that would allow the creation of new jobs for this area. We are going to lose 5,600 direct jobs on the fort, and thousands of other support jobs from contractors who work in and around the fort.
Who are the members of the authority?
Well, the members of the authority, as was constituted by the legislation, were the 4 elected officials, the 3 mayors of the affected communities, those being Tinton Falls, Eatontown, and Oceanport, so they're mayors, as well as a representative from the freeholders, Monmouth County freeholders, that being freeholder Bury. In addition to that, there were four selected citizens from the area and a ninth designee by the governor. So therefore, there were 9 voting members and 1 representative from Department of Defense who happened to be the garrison commander.
In terms of input, Mr. Harrison, from the surrounding communities, what did the authority undertake to make sure that people are heard and there's input from the affected communities, which I believe are in this case are Tinton Falls, Eatontown, and Oceanport? Is that correct?
Correct. Tremendous amount of outreach. We went through what they call a visioning process, where we held public hearings with a consultant who's an expert in the visioning process. And we actually had people drawing pictures on maps from all 3 communities. We also had a public hearing over at the Pollock Auditorium, Monmouth University. At every stage of our planning efforts, we held public hearings. And at the end of our planning process, our plan was required by state statute to be submitted to the 3 host communities for a 45-day review period. And then our final application to HUD, which included the redevelopment plan and our homeless submission, we had a public hearing in Tinton Falls, which lasted over 3 hours. These hearings, we all had verbatim transcripts made of those hearings, and those transcripts were included in our submittal to the federal government. So there's a tremendous amount of outreach to the communities.
And before we get to the plan and the approval process of the plan, what were some of the concerns, Mr. Cosentino, that citizens expressed or communities expressed about the future of Fort Monmouth and the plan that you're creating?
Well, I think that the primary concern was not knowing what would happen. Obviously, they were concerned that a developer would come in and just build from one end to the other.
And that's not going to happen.
That is not going to happen. That is correct. And I think the plan reflects that fact, that it will not happen that way. I believe that there were concerns about what would happen with all of the open space there, and how would we replace the jobs? I mean, again, it goes back to the focus. There are people who are moving with the mission down to Aberdeen and the other locations, but there will be a lot of people who will be staying here that will lose their jobs. And so they were very, very concerned about what would we be doing to revitalize the job market. And certainly in the latter stages, most recently, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but the economic impact, the general economic impact, has had even a greater measure of concern for people.
You said before the impact so far has been mostly emotional, but
That's
we're going to start to feel it relatively soon. And when do you think we'll reach sort of a critical mass of the jobs either being lost or moving? I mean, when will Monmouth County really start to experience what Fort Monmouth's closing means?
We've established a very close working relationship with the garrison and the mission people. And based on that, those discussions, I believe we're going to see the first waves, considerable waves of people moving down to Aberdeen, probably mid-2010. And it will be increasing in intensity of movement through the latter stages of 2010 into early 2011. And I think that's when you'll see the major impact take place.